She threw my clothes on the lawn, screaming, "Get out!" thinking she'd destroyed a weak man. What she didn't know, I'd been preparing for this moment for 3 years. My name is David Carter, and I'm a 42-year-old IT manager at Midtech Solutions in Columbus, Ohio. For the past 15 years, I thought I had the perfect suburban life. A beautiful wife named Jessica, a nice house in Westerville, and what I believed were solid friendships. But perfection, as I learned, is just an illusion waiting to shatter. The cracks started showing 2 years ago. Jessica, my wife of 12 years, began taking these mysterious spa weekends with her sister Amanda. Amanda Thompson, the entitled princess who married into money and never let anyone forget it. She drove a brand new BMW, lived in a mansion in Dublin, and treated everyone like her personal servants. "David, you really should let Jessica enjoy herself more," Amanda would say during family dinners, her voice dripping with condescension. Not everyone can be satisfied with such a modest lifestyle. Jessica would just smile and nod, but I noticed how she started looking at our house differently. Our perfectly fine 3-bedroom colonial suddenly wasn't good enough. Our reliable Honda Accord became an embarrassment, and I, apparently, became a disappointment. The spa weekends became more frequent. Jessica would pack her designer bags. When did she start buying designer bags? And disappear for entire weekends. She'd come back refreshed, glowing, and somehow more distant. "How was the spa?" I'd ask. "Oh, relaxing." Amanda knows all the best places, but something felt off. The receipts I occasionally glimpsed showed charges from restaurants, not spas. Hotel charges from downtown Columbus, not the countryside retreats she described. And there were text messages, lots of them, that she'd quickly hide when I walked into the room. I'm not proud of what I did next, but desperate times call for desperate measures. I set up a fake spa voucher promotion through my work's marketing department. One of the perks of being in IT is knowing how to create convincing digital materials. I sent it to Jessica's email, embedded with a tracking pixel that would notify me when opened and from where. The email was opened from the Hilton downtown, on a Tuesday afternoon, when Jessica was supposed to be at work. That's when I knew. I drove downtown that Tuesday, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The Hilton's parking garage was dimly lit, filled with the echoes of my footsteps as I searched for Jessica's car. I found it on the 3rd level, parked next to a silver Mercedes I didn't recognize. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." I sat in my car for 2 hours, watching. At 6:30 p.m., Jessica emerged from the elevator with a man I'd never seen before. Tall, well-dressed, probably in his mid-30s. They were laughing, his hand on the small of her back in a way that made my stomach turn. They kissed. Not a friendly peck, but a deep, passionate kiss that told me everything I needed to know. I followed them at a distance as they drove to an upscale restaurant in the short north. Through the window, I watched them share intimate conversation over expensive wine. The way Jessica touched his hand across the table, the way she threw her head back laughing at his jokes, the same laugh I used to think was reserved for me. I took photos, lots of them, but I didn't confront them that night. No, I had a better plan forming in my mind. Over the next few weeks, I became a detective in my own marriage. I installed monitoring software on our shared computer, completely legal since it was my name on the internet account. I discovered Jessica's secret email account, her hidden social media profiles, and most damaging of all, her detailed text conversations with her lover. His name was Ryan Mitchell. He was a business consultant, whatever that meant, who drove the Mercedes and apparently had enough money to fund Jessica's increasingly expensive tastes. The text messages were explicit, cruel, and revealing. "David has no idea," Jessica had written. "He's so boring, so predictable. He actually thinks I'm at yoga class right now." "When are you going to leave him?" Ryan had responded. "Soon." "Amanda says I should take him for everything he's worth first. Half the house, alimony, the whole deal. He's too stupid to see it coming." Too stupid to see it coming. That phrase burned in my mind for days, but the worst part wasn't the affair. It was discovering how Jessica and Amanda had been systematically poisoning my friendships. Tom Bradley and Mike Stevens had been my best friends since college. We'd been groomsmen in each other's weddings, coached our kids' soccer teams together, spent countless weekends grilling burgers and watching football. They were the brothers I'd never had, until they weren't. It started with canceled plans. "Sorry, Dave, something came up," became Tom's standard response to my invitations. Mike stopped returning my calls altogether. When I ran into them at the grocery store, the conversation was awkward, forced. "Everything okay, guys?" I asked during one particularly uncomfortable encounter at the local sports bar. Tom and Mike exchanged glances. "Look, Dave," Tom said carefully, "maybe we should talk about this somewhere private." "Talk about what?" Jessica told our wives some things, Mike said, his voice barely above a whisper. About your problems at home. What problems? Another exchanged glance. The drinking, Dave. The anger issues. The way you've been treating her. What are you talking about? I don't have drinking problems or anger issues. Come on, man, Tom said, his voice taking on that condescending tone I'd heard Amanda use so many times. Jessica showed Linda the bruises. Bruises? What bruises? I've never laid a hand on Jessica. But I could see it in their eyes. They'd already made up their minds. Jessica's lies had taken root, and my denials only made me sound more guilty. That's when I realized the full scope of Jessica and Amanda's plan. It wasn't just about having an affair. It was about systematically destroying my reputation, isolating me from my support system, and positioning Jessica as the victim when she finally pulled the trigger on our marriage. They'd underestimated me. I spent the next month gathering evidence, not just of the affair, but of Jessica's financial deceptions. The secret credit cards she'd opened in my name, the money she'd been funneling to a private account, the expensive gifts she'd been buying for Ryan using our joint savings. I also discovered something interesting about Amanda's marriage. Her husband, Richard Thompson, was apparently unaware of his wife's role as Jessica's affair coordinator. Amanda had been using their lake house as a meeting spot for Jessica and Ryan, telling Richard she was hosting girls' weekends. But the most valuable piece of information came from my monitoring of Jessica's communications. She and Amanda were planning something big for the upcoming 4th of July weekend, a confrontation designed to humiliate me in front of our entire social circle. The party at the Hendersons will be perfect, Amanda had texted Jessica. Everyone we know will be there. You can make your big announcement, play the victim, and watch David crumble. I can't wait to see his face, Jessica had responded. He has no idea what's coming. She was right. I had no idea what was coming, because I was planning something much bigger. The Hendersons' 4th of July party was a Westerville tradition. Every year, Jim and Carol Henderson opened their sprawling backyard to half the neighborhood for an afternoon of grilling, drinking, and fireworks. It was the social event of the summer, where reputations were made and destroyed over potato salad and beer. This year, it would be the stage for my revenge. I spent 2 weeks preparing. First, I needed allies. People who knew the real Jessica, not the victim persona she'd been crafting. I started with Carol Henderson herself. Carol, I need to ask you something confidential, I said when I called her on a Tuesday morning. Have you noticed anything strange about Jessica lately? There was a pause. Why do you ask, David? I think she's having an affair. Another pause, longer this time. Oh, David. I was hoping I wouldn't have to be the one to tell you. It turned out Carol had seen Jessica and Ryan together at a restaurant downtown. She'd also overheard Amanda bragging to another neighbor about how Jessica was finally going to dump that loser husband of hers. I'm so sorry, David. I didn't know how to bring it up. Don't be sorry. I need your help. Carol Henderson was a retired event planner with a flair for drama and a strong sense of justice. When I explained what Jessica and Amanda were planning for her party, she was furious. They want to use my home to embarrass you, not while I'm still breathing. Together, we crafted a counterplan. I also reached out to my old college buddy Sam Morrison, who owned a tech security company. Sam had always been suspicious of Jessica. He'd never liked how she treated me, and he was more than happy to help when I explained the situation. You need a smoking gun, Sam said as we sat in his office, surrounded by computer monitors and surveillance equipment. Something undeniable. I have photos, text messages, financial records. That's good, but you need something more dramatic. Something that will make everyone understand exactly who Jessica really is. Sam's plan was brilliant in its simplicity. He would attend the Hendersons' party with a special briefcase, one equipped with a hidden projector and wireless connectivity. At the right moment, we could display Jessica's text messages, photos of her with Ryan, and her financial deceptions on the side of the Hendersons' white garage for everyone to see. It'll be like a drive-in movie, Sam grinned, except the feature presentation is your wife's lies. But I wanted more than just exposure. I wanted Jessica and Amanda to feel the same humiliation they'd planned for me. That's where my IT skills came in handy. I created a fake social media account and began documenting Amanda's real lifestyle. It turned out the Thompsons' financial situation wasn't as solid as Amanda pretended. Richard's construction business was struggling. They were behind on their mortgage, and Amanda's shopping addiction was funded entirely by credit cards. I also discovered that Ryan Mitchell's business consulting was actually a pyramid scheme that had left several local families financially ruined. He was currently being investigated by the state attorney general's office for fraud. Jessica had fallen in love with a con man, and Amanda had been enabling it all. The morning of the party, I woke up before Jessica and prepared my final surprise. I printed out every incriminating text message, every photo, every financial record. I organized them in a neat folder labeled The Real Jessica Carter and made copies for every family that would be at the party. Jessica came downstairs around 10, looking radiant in a new sundress I'd never seen before. "You look beautiful," I said, meaning it. Even knowing what I knew, I could still appreciate the woman I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. "Thank you," she said, but her smile seemed forced. "Are you ready for the party? More ready than you know?" Amanda arrived at noon to pick up Jessica. She barely acknowledged me as she swept into our house, her designer sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. "David," she said with that familiar condescending tone, "I hope you're planning to behave yourself today." "Oh, I'll be on my best behavior," I replied. "Scout's honor." Jessica kissed my cheek. The betrayal of that simple gesture still stings. And they left together, probably to pick up Ryan from whatever hotel he was staying at. I waited 30 minutes, then loaded Sam's equipment into my car along with my folders of evidence. The Hendersons' party was about to become very interesting. The party was in full swing when I arrived. Kids ran around the backyard with sparklers, adults clustered around the beer cooler and grill, and the smell of barbecue filled the air. It was perfect. Exactly the kind of wholesome American scene that would make Jessica's deception even more shocking. I spotted Jessica immediately. She was holding court near the pool, surrounded by the neighborhood wives, playing her role as the long-suffering spouse to perfection. Amanda stood beside her like a protective bodyguard, occasionally shooting hostile glances in my direction. Tom and Mike were there too, standing with their wives near the food table. They nodded when they saw me, but their expressions were guarded. They were waiting for the show Jessica had promised them. "David!" Carol Henderson appeared at my elbow, her eyes bright with anticipation. "How are you holding up?" "Better than expected," I said. "Is everything ready?" She nodded toward the garage, where Sam was casually setting up what looked like a standard laptop presentation. To anyone watching, it would appear he was just preparing a slideshow of neighborhood photos, a common feature at these gatherings. "Jessica looks nervous," Carol observed. She was right. Despite her confident facade, Jessica kept checking her phone and glancing toward the street. She was waiting for something. At 3:30 p.m., a silver Mercedes pulled up to the curb. Ryan Mitchell stepped out, and I got my first close look at the man who'd stolen my wife. He was handsome in a generic way, the kind of guy who probably used the same pickup lines on every woman he met. He wore expensive clothes and an expensive watch, but there was something cheap about his smile. Jessica's face lit up when she saw him, and several people noticed. Whispers began circulating through the party. "Who's that guy? Why is Jessica looking at him like that?" Amanda quickly moved to intercept Ryan, guiding him toward the back of the yard where they could talk privately. I watched as the three of them huddled together, occasionally glancing in my direction. Jessica looked increasingly agitated. This was it. They were about to make their move. I caught Sam's eye and nodded. He casually opened his laptop and began typing. "Attention, everyone." Amanda's voice cut through the party chatter. She was standing on the Hendersons' deck, Jessica beside her, commanding attention like a queen addressing her subjects. Jessica has something she'd like to share with everyone. The crowd gathered around the deck. I noticed Tom and Mike moving closer, their wives beside them, all of them eager to witness my humiliation. Jessica took a deep breath, her hand resting on Amanda's arm for support. "Thank you all for being here today. You've been such wonderful friends and neighbors, and that's why I felt it was important to tell you in person." She paused for dramatic effect, her eyes finding mine in the crowd. "Now, David and I are getting divorced." Gasps rippled through the gathering. Several people looked at me with sympathy, others with curiosity. "I know this comes as a shock," Jessica continued, her voice taking on a trembling quality that I recognized as completely fake. "But I can't continue living in fear." "Fear?" Carol Henderson stepped forward, playing her part perfectly. "What do you mean, fear?" Jessica's lower lip quivered. "David has been abusive, emotionally and physically. I've tried to hide it, tried to protect him, but I can't anymore." The crowd's sympathy shifted immediately. Now they were looking at me with suspicion, disgust, even anger. Tom and Mike moved protectively closer to their wives. "That's a serious accusation, Jessica," Jim Henderson said carefully. "I have proof," Amanda announced, pulling out her phone. "Photos of bruises, recordings of threats. We've documented everything. This was better than I'd hoped. They were going all in on their lies, which would make their downfall even more spectacular." "That's interesting," I said, speaking for the first time since Jessica's announcement. My voice was calm, conversational. "Because I have some documentation of my own." I nodded to Sam, who pressed a key on his laptop. Suddenly, the white wall of the Hendersons' garage was illuminated with a projection of Jessica's text messages to Ryan. David has no idea. He's so boring, so predictable. The crowd turned to stare at the wall, confused murmurs spreading through the gathering. "What is this?" Jessica demanded, but her voice had lost its confident tone. Sam pressed another key, and a photo appeared, Jessica and Ryan kissing in the hotel parking garage. "This," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the now silent yard, "is the truth." The silence that followed was deafening. 40-some neighbors stood frozen, their eyes moving between the projection on the garage wall and Jessica's rapidly paling face. "This is fake," Amanda said quickly, but her voice lacked conviction. "David must have manipulated these images." Sam pressed another key, and a new series of text messages appeared. "When are you going to leave him?" Ryan: "Soon." "Amanda says I should take him for everything he's worth first. Half the house, alimony, the whole deal. He's too stupid to see it coming." Jessica: "Too stupid to see it coming," I repeated, looking directly at Jessica. "That's what you wrote about your husband of 12 years. Jessica's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The trembling victim act had evaporated, replaced by the look of someone caught in a trap. "David, please," she said, but I wasn't done. "Show them the financial records, Sam." The projection changed to display bank statements, credit card bills, and transfer records. The crowd could see every expensive dinner, every hotel room, every gift Jessica had purchased for her lover using our joint accounts. $37,000, I announced. That's how much of our money Jessica spent on her affair over the past 8 months. Tom Bradley stepped forward, his face red with anger, but not at me. "Jesus, Jessica, you made us think David was hitting you." "You told our wives he was an alcoholic," Mike added, his voice disgusted. "We stopped talking to our friend because of your lies." "I can explain," Jessica started, but Amanda grabbed her arm. "We're leaving," Amanda declared. "This is harassment." "Actually, you're not leaving yet," Carol Henderson said firmly. "This is my property, and I want to hear the rest of David's presentation." I pulled out my folders and began distributing them to the crowd. "These contain copies of everything you're seeing, plus some additional information about Jessica's accomplices." Amanda's face went white as people began reading. "It seems Amanda has been using her husband's lake house as a love nest for Jessica and Ryan," I continued. "Without Richard's knowledge, of course. She's also been funding Jessica's affair using credit cards that Richard doesn't know about." "That's not true," Amanda protested, but her voice was shaking. "Page 3, I said calmly. "Credit card statements for cards opened in Richard's name without his signature." "That's identity theft, Amanda. A felony." The crowd was getting angry now, but their anger was directed at Jessica and Amanda. These were good people, honest people, who'd been manipulated and lied to. "Where's this Ryan guy?" Jim Henderson asked, looking around the yard. We all turned to look, but the silver Mercedes was gone. Ryan had apparently decided that discretion was the better part of valor and fled when the projection started. "Smart man," I said, "especially considering he's currently under investigation by the state attorney general for running a pyramid scheme that defrauded several Ohio families out of their life savings." Jessica staggered backward, as if I'd hit her. "What? Your boyfriend is a con man, Jessica. His business consulting is a scam. The expensive dinners, the gifts, the hotel rooms, all paid for with money stolen from retirees and young families." I pulled out my phone and showed her a news article I'd bookmarked. "He's facing federal charges. The FBI raided his apartment last week." Jessica sank into one of the Hendersons' patio chairs, her face buried in her hands. The confident woman who'd stood on the deck minutes earlier had completely disappeared, but I wasn't finished with Amanda. "Tell everyone about your marriage, Amanda," I said. "Tell them how you've been lying about your financial situation while judging everyone else for being modest." "Shut up," Amanda hissed. "Tell them about the second mortgage on your house, the maxed-out credit cards, the fact that Richard's business is failing, and you're 3 months behind on your BMW payments." Amanda lunged at me, her manicured nails aimed at my face, but Tom Bradley caught her arms. "Let me go," she screamed. "This is all lies." "Page 7, I said to the crowd. Credit reports for both Thompson households. Public records, all completely legal to obtain. Carol Henderson was reading over my shoulder, her eyes wide. "Amanda, you owe over $200,000 in credit card debt?" "Richard doesn't know about most of it," I added. "She's been forging his signature on applications and using his business credit to fund her shopping addiction." Amanda stopped struggling and began to cry. Real tears this time, not the crocodile tears Jessica had been preparing to shed. "You don't understand," Amanda sobbed. "I had to keep up appearances. People expect certain things from us." So you committed fraud, Mike Stevens said flatly. And you dragged Jessica into your mess. I didn't drag anyone anywhere, Amanda shot back, her grief turning to anger. Jessica came to me. She wanted out of her boring marriage, and I helped her. By encouraging her to lie about domestic abuse? Carol Henderson's voice was ice cold. Do you have any idea how that damages real victims? The crowd was turning ugly now. These were people who'd believed Jessica's lies, who'd treated me like a pariah based on her false accusations. They felt betrayed, manipulated, and they wanted someone to pay for it. I think you both need to leave, Jim Henderson said firmly. Now. Gladly, Amanda said, grabbing Jessica's arm and pulling her toward the street, but Jessica shook her off. No, she said quietly. I need to talk to David. There's nothing to talk about, Amanda snapped. We're leaving. I said no. Jessica's voice was stronger now, more like the woman I'd married. David, please. Can we talk privately? I looked around the crowd. 40 pairs of eyes were watching us, waiting to see what would happen next. Anything you want to say to me, you can say in front of our friends, I replied. After all, you were perfectly comfortable lying about me in front of them. Jessica flinched as if I'd slapped her. David, I'm sorry. I know how this looks, but you don't understand the pressure I was under. What pressure? The pressure of having a husband who loved you? The pressure of having a comfortable life and financial security? You don't get it, Jessica said, her voice rising. I felt trapped, like I was suffocating in our perfect little suburban life. So you decided to destroy it. I decided to find something that made me feel alive again. By lying to our friends? By stealing our money? By planning to take me for everything I was worth? Jessica had no answer for that. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to pack your things and move out of our house. Tonight, you're going to sign a separation agreement that gives you nothing beyond your personal belongings. And you're going to stay away from me, our friends, and this neighborhood. You can't make me do that, Jessica said, but her voice lacked conviction. I smiled, not a nice smile. Actually, I can. Because if you don't, I'm going to send copies of all this evidence to your employer, your family, and every social media contact you have. I'm also going to file a police report for the identity theft and fraud you committed using our joint accounts. Jessica stared at me, finally understanding that the weak, predictable husband she'd married was gone. And Amanda, I continued, turning to face Jessica's partner in crime, you're going to tell Richard everything. Tonight. Because if you don't, I will. Amanda opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off. I have Richard's email address, his work number, and the contact information for his business partners. How do you think they'll react when they learn about the fraud you've been committing in his name? Amanda deflated like a punctured balloon. You bastard! No, I said calmly. I'm just someone who got tired of being played for a fool. The crowd began to disperse as Jessica and Amanda walked toward Amanda's BMW. I watched them go, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. 12 years of marriage. Gone. But at least now everyone knew the truth. Tom and Mike approached me as the last of the neighbors headed home. Dave, Tom said awkwardly, we owe you an apology. A big one, Mike added. We should have known Jessica was lying. You believed your wives, I said. I can't fault you for that. Still, Tom insisted. We should have talked to you directly instead of just cutting you off. I nodded. Yeah, you should have. We stood there for a moment, the weight of damaged friendship hanging between us. So, Mike said finally, you want to grab a beer sometime this week? We have a lot of catching up to do. I smiled, a real smile this time. I'd like that. As I drove home, I felt lighter than I had in months. The truth was out, my friends were back, and Jessica's lies had finally caught up with her. But I wasn't done yet. There was still one more person who needed to face the consequences of this mess. Ryan Mitchell might have run away from the party, but he couldn't run from what was coming next. I found Ryan Mitchell 3 days later at a Starbucks in the short north, sitting alone at a corner table with his laptop open and his phone pressed to his ear. He was trying to manage the fallout from his collapsing pyramid scheme, judging by the frantic tone of his conversation. No, Mr. Patterson, I can explain the delay in your returns, he was saying as I approached his table. There's been a temporary liquidity issue, but I assure you. He looked up and saw me standing there. His face went pale. I'll have to call you back, he said quickly, ending the call. Hello, Ryan, I said, taking the seat across from him without being invited. We need to talk. Ryan was even less impressive up close than he'd been from a distance. His expensive clothes couldn't hide the nervous sweat on his forehead or the dark circles under his eyes. This was a man under pressure. Look, David, I know you're upset, he began, but I held up my hand to stop him. Upset? I laughed. Ryan, I'm not upset. I'm grateful. That caught him off guard. Grateful? You did me a favor, I explained. You showed me who my wife really was. Saved me years of living with a woman who saw me as nothing more than a bank account with legs. Ryan shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Jessica really did love you, you know. She needed something different. She needed money, I corrected. Your money, specifically. How's that working out for her now that the FBI has frozen all your assets? Ryan's jaw tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and showed him a news article from that morning's Columbus Dispatch. Local man indicted in multi-million-dollar investment fraud. Congratulations, I said. You made the front page of the business section. Ryan stared at the article, his hands shaking slightly. This is all a misunderstanding. My lawyer says, Your lawyer is going to recommend you take a plea deal, I interrupted, because the evidence against you is overwhelming. Bank records, victim testimonies, recorded phone calls. The FBI has been building this case for 2 years. I leaned forward, studying his face. The question is, what are you going to do about Jessica? What do you mean? She spent 8 months believing you were a successful businessman. She left her marriage for you. She lied to her friends and family for you. And now she's going to find out that everything you told her was a lie. Ryan looked genuinely confused. She already knows about the investigation. I told her yesterday. And she hung up on me. Won't return my calls. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Let me guess, I said. She was only interested in you when she thought you had money. Ryan nodded miserably. She said she needed time to think. That was yesterday morning. I haven't heard from her since. That's because Jessica is a user, Ryan. She used me for stability and security, and she used you for excitement and money. Now that both of those things are gone, she has no use for either of us. I stood up to leave, but Ryan grabbed my arm. Wait, he said desperately. What am I supposed to do now? My business is gone, my assets are frozen, and the woman I thought I loved won't even talk to me. I looked down at his hand on my arm until he let go. You're going to face the consequences of your choices, I said simply, just like Jessica is facing hers. I walked away, leaving Ryan alone with his laptop and his problems. But my day wasn't over yet. I had one more stop to make. Jessica was staying at a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, a far cry from the luxury hotels she'd been frequenting with Ryan. I found her in the parking lot, loading boxes into her Honda Accord. She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, and her face was puffy from crying. The confident woman who'd stood on the Hendersons' deck was completely gone. David, she said when she saw me, what are you doing here? I brought you something, I said, handing her an envelope. She opened it warily. Inside were divorce papers and a cashier's check. $5,000, I explained. That's more than generous, considering you stole $37,000 from our joint accounts. Jessica stared at the check. This is it? This is all I get from 12 years of marriage? You get your freedom, I said, which is what you wanted, right? I never meant for things to go this far, she said quietly. The lies just snowballed. You made choices, Jessica. You chose to have an affair. You chose to lie about domestic abuse. You chose to steal our money. And you chose to try to destroy my reputation. I was scared, she said, tears starting to fall. Amanda convinced me that you'd try to take everything if I just asked for a divorce. So instead, you decided to take everything from me. Jessica had no answer for that. Ryan's been arrested, I told her. Federal charges. He's looking at 10 to 15 years in prison. Jessica's face crumpled. I know, I saw the news. Did you know he was a con man when you started sleeping with him? No, she said quickly. I thought he was legitimate, successful. Would you have left me for a broke con man? Jessica was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, she finally admitted. Yes, you do, I said. You left me because you thought Ryan had more money than I did. You were trading up, or so you thought. That's not fair. What's not fair is lying to our friends about domestic abuse. What's not fair is stealing money from our joint accounts. What's not fair is planning to take me for everything I was worth while pretending to be a victim. Jessica wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. So, what happens now? Now you sign those divorce papers and disappear from my life, I said. You move somewhere far away from Columbus and you start over. And if you're smart, you'll learn from this experience. Learn what? Learn that actions have consequences. Learn that lies eventually catch up with you. Learn that you can't build happiness on someone else's misery. Jessica looked at the divorce papers in her hands. Where am I supposed to go? I don't have any money, no job, no friends. You should have thought about that before you destroyed your marriage. I started to walk away, but Jessica called after me. David, wait. I know I hurt you, but we had good times too, didn't we? 12 years has to count for something. I turned back to face her one last time. It did count for something, I said. It counted for everything. But you threw it all away for a con man with a nice car and a fake smile. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know you are. But sorry doesn't undo the damage. I got in my car and drove away, leaving Jessica standing alone in that motel parking lot with her boxes and her regrets. 3 weeks later, I received the signed divorce papers in the mail. The return address was from somewhere in Arizona. Jessica had taken my advice and disappeared from Columbus. Amanda's situation was more complicated. When Richard found out about the fraud she'd committed in his name, he filed for divorce and pressed criminal charges. The last I heard, she was facing 5 years in prison and had lost everything: the house, the car, even her designer clothes. Ryan Mitchell took a plea deal and got 12 years in federal prison. His victims would never recover their money, but at least he wouldn't be able to hurt anyone else for a long time. As for me, I kept the house, rebuilt my friendships, and learned to enjoy my own company. Tom and Mike and I started having regular poker nights again. Carol Henderson invited me to all the neighborhood gatherings. Life was good. But the best part was the lesson I'd learned about revenge. Sometimes the best revenge isn't something you do to someone else. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people face the natural consequences of their own choices. Jessica chose to have an affair with a con man, and she lost everything. Amanda chose to commit fraud to maintain her lifestyle, and she lost everything. Ryan chose to steal money from innocent people, and he lost everything. I didn't destroy them. They destroyed themselves. I just made sure everyone could see it happen. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was cleaning out the basement when I found a box I'd forgotten about. Old photo albums from the early years of my marriage to Jessica. I sat on the concrete floor, surrounded by dusty Christmas decorations and broken exercise equipment, flipping through pictures of happier times. There we were on our honeymoon in Cancun, both of us grinning at the camera with sunburned faces and too many margaritas in our systems. Jessica's smile was genuine then, full of love and hope for our future together. Another photo showed us at Tom's wedding, where Jessica had caught the bouquet and insisted it meant we'd be next. We were married 8 months later in a small ceremony at her parents' church in Akron. Page after page of memories, birthday parties, vacations, quiet Sunday mornings, reading the newspaper in bed. When had it all gone wrong? When had the woman who used to laugh at my terrible jokes and steal my hoodies become someone who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to overcome? My phone rang, interrupting my melancholy trip down memory lane. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Hello? David? It's Amanda. I almost hung up immediately. I hadn't spoken to Amanda Thompson since the 4th of July party, and I had no desire to start now. What do you want, Amanda? I'm calling from the Franklin County Jail, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I get 1 phone call a day, and I needed to talk to you. About what? There was a long pause. I wanted to apologize. Apologize for what exactly? The fraud? The lies? Destroying my marriage? You'll have to be more specific. All of it, she said, and I could hear tears in her voice. David, I'm going to prison. 5 years, minimum. Richard divorced me, took the kids, and won't even let me see them. I lost everything. And it's all my fault. Not Jessica's, not Ryan's. Mine. I waited for her to continue. Jessica came to me 2 years ago, Amanda said. She was feeling restless, bored with suburban life. She wanted excitement, adventure, something to make her feel young again. I should have encouraged her to talk to you, to work on your marriage. But you didn't. No, I didn't, because I was jealous. That caught me off guard. Jealous of what? Of what you and Jessica had. A real marriage, built on love and trust and shared experiences. Richard and I never had that. Our marriage was always about appearances, about keeping up with the neighbors and maintaining our social status. Amanda's voice broke slightly. When Jessica started complaining about being bored, I saw an opportunity to drag her down to my level. If I couldn't have a happy marriage, why should she? I found myself gripping the phone tighter. So you encouraged her to have an affair. I introduced her to Ryan at a charity function. I knew he was a smooth talker, knew he'd be interested in a beautiful married woman. I thought it would just be a harmless flirtation, something to make Jessica feel desirable again. But it wasn't harmless. No, it wasn't. And when Jessica started talking about leaving you, I should have stopped her. Instead, I helped her. I gave them a place to meet. I covered for her when she lied to you. I even helped her open those secret credit cards. Why? Another long pause. Because I wanted her to be as miserable as I was. I thought if she threw away her marriage for a con man, she'd realize what she'd lost. But by then it would be too late, and she'd be stuck in the same loveless existence I was trapped in. I sat in stunned silence, processing this revelation. David, are you still there? I'm here, I said quietly. Amanda, do you realize what you're telling me? You deliberately sabotaged my marriage because you were unhappy in your own? Yes, she whispered. And I'm sorrier than you'll ever know. Sorry doesn't undo 12 years of marriage. I know it doesn't. But I wanted you to understand that Jessica really did love you. The woman who married you, who spent all those years building a life with you, that was real. I corrupted it, twisted it into something ugly. I thought about the photo albums scattered around me, all those genuine smiles and shared moments. Jessica made her own choices, Amanda. You didn't force her to have an affair. No, but I made it easier. I enabled it. I convinced her that you were holding her back, that she deserved better. I poisoned her against you because I couldn't stand watching her be happy when I was so miserable. And now you're both miserable. Yes, and you're free. That was true. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely free. No more wondering where Jessica was or who she was with. No more walking on eggshells around Amanda's cutting remarks. No more pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. Amanda, why are you telling me this now? Because I'm going to prison and I might never get another chance. Because you deserved to know the truth. And because... She paused. Because I hope someday you can forgive Jessica. She was weak, and I took advantage of that weakness. Where is Jessica now? Phoenix. She's working as a waitress at some diner, living in a studio apartment. She calls me sometimes, crying about how much she misses her old life. How much she misses you. I felt a pang of something. Not quite sympathy, but not satisfaction either. She made her choice. She made a stupid choice, influenced by a bitter woman who wanted to drag her down. That doesn't excuse what she did, but maybe it explains it. The line went quiet for a moment. David, I need you to know something else. Jessica never hit herself to fake those bruises. What? The bruises she showed to Tom and Mike's wives? I did that. I grabbed her arms hard enough to leave marks, told her it was necessary to make the abuse story believable. I felt sick. Jesus, Amanda. I know how awful that sounds. But I was desperate to make the plan work, and Jessica was having second thoughts about lying to everyone. So you physically abused her to help her fake being abused? Yes, and I'll carry that guilt for the rest of my life. I didn't know what to say to that. My time's almost up, Amanda said. David, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to forgive Jessica. But I wanted you to know that what you had with her in the beginning, that was real. I destroyed it, but it was real. I sat in my basement for another hour, staring at those old photos and thinking about Amanda's confession. Did it change anything? Did knowing that Amanda had orchestrated much of Jessica's betrayal make me feel any differently about my ex-wife? The answer was complicated. Yes, Jessica had been manipulated by a bitter, jealous woman. But she was also an adult who made her own choices. She chose to have the affair. She chose to lie to our friends. She chose to steal our money. Amanda might have enabled those choices, but she didn't make them for her. Still, there was something to be said for understanding the full scope of what had happened. Amanda's jealousy and manipulation had created a perfect storm that destroyed my marriage. Jessica was a victim, in some ways, even as she was also a perpetrator. But it didn't matter now. Jessica was in Phoenix, Amanda was in prison, Ryan was in federal custody, and I was free to build whatever life I wanted. I gathered up the photo albums and put them back in the box. Then I carried the box upstairs and out to the curb for the next day's trash pickup. Some memories are worth keeping. Others are just weight that holds you back. As I watched the garbage truck take away the last remnants of my marriage the following morning, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Genuine peace. Jessica had thrown away our life together for the promise of something better. Amanda had destroyed her own family out of jealousy and spite. Ryan had built his entire existence on lies and theft. They had all lost everything in pursuit of things that weren't real. I had lost everything too, but what I'd lost was an illusion. The perfect marriage, the loyal friends, the stable suburban life, it had all been built on lies and manipulation. Now I had something better, the truth. And the truth, as painful as it had been to discover, had set me free. That evening, Tom, Mike, and I sat on my back deck, drinking beer and watching the sunset. We'd been doing this every Friday for the past few months, rebuilding the friendship that Jessica's lies had nearly destroyed. "You seem different lately," Tom observed. "More relaxed." "I feel different," I admitted. "Like I finally understand what happened and why." "Amanda called you from jail?" Mike asked. I'd told them about the conversation earlier. "Yeah, she wanted to confess, I guess. Ease her conscience before she goes to prison." "Do you believe her? About manipulating Jessica?" I thought about it. "Yeah, I do. It makes sense. Jessica wasn't naturally manipulative or cruel, but she was weak, and Amanda knew exactly how to exploit that weakness." "Does it change how you feel about Jessica?" "Not really. Understanding why someone hurt you doesn't undo the hurt." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sky turn from orange to purple to black. "You know what the crazy thing is?" I said eventually. "I'm happier now than I was when I was married." "How so?" Tom asked. "Because everything in my life now is real. My friendships, my financial situation, my daily routine, it's all based on truth instead of lies. There are no secrets, no hidden agendas, no one pretending to be something they're not." "That's worth something," Mike agreed. "It's worth everything." As my friends headed home to their families, I stayed on the deck for another hour, enjoying the quiet and the solitude. Tomorrow was Saturday, and I had no plans beyond maybe catching a movie or working in the garden. For the first time in years, I was exactly where I wanted to be, with exactly the life I wanted to live. Jessica had been right about one thing. I was predictable, but predictable didn't mean boring or weak. It meant stable, reliable, honest. Those weren't qualities to be ashamed of. They were qualities to be proud of. And someday, when I was ready, they'd be qualities that the right woman would appreciate. But for now, I was content to be alone with my truth, my freedom, and my hard-won peace.